As a new agent, I would say you are looking for a broker that will shoot straight with you, that will give you direction, and that will be invested in your growth.
All right, we got to get started because in this video, I interview the one and only David Greene from the BiggerPockets Podcast, who is an agent and investor himself. So let's go. Welcome to Agent versus Investor Cage Match with me, Anson Young. I am both an agent and an investor here in the real estate world, and I've done hundreds of transactions in both of those categories. So I get to walk this unique line between the two, and I help, open up that world to the rest of you. You are watching this video on BiggerPockets YouTube channel, so please like it, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let's get started. This is going to turn from this to something a little bit more like this. And we're going to interview David Greene right now. All right, so for the first time ever, we're having a guest, and it is Mr. David Greene. David, tell us just a tiny bit about yourself, what you do, how you do it, all of your deepest, darkest secrets. Go.
Well, I think I have the best head of hair in the industry. First off, I work very hard and pride myself at my ability to do that. I could grow a fantastic beard, but Brandon's very insecure about that, and I don't want to threaten him, so I sort of willingly submit in that area and keep mine really short so that Brandon can take the inherent masculinity that comes from having a big beard. I actually have a theory about as modern day sort of like culture masculinity becomes more threatened, guys get uncomfortable being traditionally masculine, so they overcompensate for it with a really big beard. It's kind of like the new huge 4x4 truck of 2021. Not saying that that's anything to do with Brandon, but yeah, that's pretty much only thing people need to know about me. I'm only here to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. I agree. I mean, I think you carry that 4x4 with you. So if you're like in the, the brewery or someplace cool, people know you're cool.
That's exactly right. Like if your truck's in the parking lot, no one can see how hard you're trying, but your beard is everywhere that you go. Anyways, that has nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about today. I am a very simple example of how real estate can make someone successful with a very meager and moderate means. I was a former police officer. I just worked a whole bunch, saved up a bunch of money, bought houses with it, had no idea what that would turn into, ended up making me a millionaire before I even knew that I was a millionaire. I don't give myself a whole lot of credit for that happening. I really give the credit to real estate. If you can just get buoys in the water and then the price of everything goes up and your expenses stay low, you'll make money. So I was able to write a couple of books for BiggerPockets detailing some of the strategies that I used to do that. One of them was long distance real estate investing, which obviously is about investing long distance because I live in California and properties were too expensive here to make sense of. At certain points in the cycle, I wrote the BRRRR book, Buy, Rehab, Rent, Refinance, Repeat, about how I took that capital that I made working a lot of overtime and recycled it to buy several houses with it. I wrote the book Sold, Every Real Estate Agent's Guide to Building a Profitable Business, which is the first in a 3-part series for BiggerPockets that's going to detail how to become a successful real estate agent. Now I run a real estate team. I'm a real estate broker. I have a mortgage company. We do loans now for a lot of people all throughout the country. So we kind of specialize in investment property, but we can do conventional loans just like everyone else. I host the BiggerPockets podcast. I do webinars for BiggerPockets. I'm kind of just a gadfly at this point. Just everywhere I can go to talk about any kind of real estate I can. Big geek.
You do it all. Well, I mean, you are an agent and you are an investor, which is what this entire series is about. And so I think that there's just a lot of dichotomy there. There's a lot of investors that I talk to that just really don't like agents, and a lot of agents who really don't like investors. So I'm trying to be the peaceful bridge that we can all.
You're trying to be the Joe Rogan of real estate, right? Like you're trying to get everybody to see everyone else's point of view so we can all just get along.
Right. I'll have everybody on. They can just, I'll just nod. I'll be like, interesting.
Talk about elk meat. Yeah.
Yes.
I love your perspective, Anson, and there's not a lot of people that have it. This is one of the reasons I feel like, other than our bald heads, we have this bond, because agents are often told by people who give agent training, don't work with investors. They will suck the life out of you. You'll make no money. And investors are frequently complaining about agents who have commission breath and only care about making money. And there's a huge divide between the two groups. But when you can connect that divide, like the victor gets all the spoils. And so I think this is an awesome topic to talk about.
So as an agent, we'll attack this on the agent side a little bit, but as an agent, basically, what are you looking for in a brokerage and why? Like, what is something that somebody should be looking for? And obviously, everybody has different needs. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. The first thing I'll say is what you should not be looking for as a new person. You should not be looking for the best split that you can possibly get. That's one of the biggest mistakes everyone makes. Is they're a brand new agent, they know nothing. They're like a baby that basically just can contribute nothing to the relationship other than just crying and being fed, maybe having their butt wiped every once in a while. And they want to go in there and negotiate against their broker and say, I want a 90-10 split. I don't want to be at 60-40 or 50-50 or whatever it is. And there's many times in life where you can win the battle but lose the war. I see this, the older I get, the more mature I become. I see all the time that a very savvy broker will say, okay, fine, you can be in a 90-10 split. And in their head, they just said, I will put no effort into growing this person because I'm only going to get 10% of what they make. Whereas someone says, yeah, 50-50 is fine with me. I just want to learn. Now the broker's invested in training you. You never win a negotiation where the other side lost. Okay. And I've explained this to the agents that are on my team. Maybe they come to me and they say, hey, David, I want a better split. And I say, okay, what if I give it to you? That'd be great. Well, when I have the lead that comes in, do you think I'm going to give it to you or do you think I'm going to give it to the agent that has the better split? Oh, yeah. So do you really want that better split, right? It's not like a threat. It's just to have some common sense here. If any relationship becomes skewed too far in one direction, the whole thing falls apart. As a new agent, I would say you are looking for a broker that will shoot straight with you, that will give you direction, and that will be invested in your growth. And that has to be taken with a dose of humility where you understand you are a liability to that brokerage until you start selling homes. And the vast majority of agents will not hit that point. So you have to kind of temper your expectations. I've never heard an agent who loves their broker. I've never heard one time that someone said, oh, they crush it. I love them. They're so great. So that's the first thing I would say. And if you're an experienced agent, kind of like where I am now, I still don't go back and negotiate my split with my broker. I just don't care. My question to them becomes, what support can you give me for where I am? Can you help me with hiring? Can you help me with training and managing my staff? Can you connect me with bookkeepers, accountants? Can you get me into the higher ups of somewhere else in real estate where that can help my business? I never, ever, ever try to take money away from someone else because that takes away the motivation to help me. Instead, I say, how can you help me to make us both more money?
And so, yeah, you touched on it in there where that split that you pay, and that's just basically a percentage of your commission that you are paying to, the people who are responsible for you. What are you getting for that money is that second part of what you said. And that's huge. I think that's like, for me, that's kind of number one is like, what are you getting for that money? And don't go cheap, because I feel like you lose out on a lot of support and a lot of training and a lot of the good stuff there. So as an agent, I'll attack this two different ways, but how do you attract clients? I mean, if you weren't David Greene and you were just Joe Schmo, how would you go about attracting clients? And I think the second part of this, which I think might be even better, so answer either one or both, but you moved to a new city and you knew nobody. How would you attract clients from zero?
So there was a long period of time, not that long ago, when I was just Joe Schmo. I wasn't hosting a podcast. I hadn't written any books. I was just a cop that owned rentals. And I talk about in the new book that's going to be coming out in a couple months for BiggerPockets. It's called Skill. It's the second in the series for agents. I talk about top producer characteristics. Basically, there's two things that I tell people. If you get these right, you're going to be fine. The first is, everybody says, what do I go do? What is the first step? They want like color by number diagram. Does that make sense? Like go from 1 to 2. The problem is you never get an impressive painting out of a color by number scheme. You get something that counts as a finished piece of art, but nobody is really thrilled about it. The better way is to look at the end result of what you want and become that person. But that is a much more effective way. It's who do I have to become as opposed to what do I have to do? I don't like the what do I have to do question, because you can be a skis ball and learn how to go hold open houses, memorize a script, and get a client to work with you, and then you do a terrible job and they tell everyone you were terrible. You never actually get any momentum, right? Versus, well, if I was buying a house, what would I care about? What would I be feeling? What emotions would I be having? What would I want someone to do for me? When in my life have I been scared or nervous or anxious and somebody calmed me down? Where did that person get that character trait from? And actually work on becoming that. The second piece of advice is you have to find a way to work real estate into every conversation you have naturally. You just have to be like Johnny Appleseed, spreading seeds all the places. You can't be like, I'm never too busy for your referrals, and handing them a business card. Nobody likes that, and everyone does it, right? What it has to be instead is, so what did you do this weekend? And they tell you, oh, I went fishing and blah, blah. Well, did you catch a fish? Yes, it was awesome. What was it like when you freaking set that hook? And they tell you this amazing story. And you'd be like, that's so cool. I had a very similar experience. I threw out 3 offers and we got one of them accepted. And I remember the point when I got the listing agent to accept our offer. It felt just like setting a hook. So now I'm going to use this technique with every client that I have. I love the job that I have. And what that did was it set me apart from every other agent that they ever saw on a billboard or a business card, wearing a pantsuit, saying some cheesy, I give great customer service, holding your hand the whole way, making your dream come true. There's actually a practical component that they saw something in you that they haven't seen in other people, and it plants a seed in their mind. That's the person I want when I want to buy a house. And you have to find creative ways to do that naturally. You can't BS it. You also can't be afraid to say anything, right? Like, it's usually people err on one side or the other. They just sit there and wait for someone to come to them, or they just brag about how great they are the entire time and the other person can't stand it. So those are the 2 pieces of advice I would say. If you move to a new area, if you can get those down, you'll be fine.
I'm assuming that the fishing thing was just an analogy off the top of your head. What's a real world example of something, of how you kind of work that in? And obviously the funnier the better. No
I will usually ask someone something that I think is going to be, we all have things we like to talk about, and then we have things that we just will talk about, right? Certain topics, like what book are you reading that you're really into? If you can hit gold with that, people will just, they'll tell you everything, right? So I asked someone the other day and they said they're reading The Untethered Soul. And they just went on for 20 minutes about all the stuff that they're thinking about differently and that they never thought about before. And I asked a couple of questions, and it got into their childhood and how they came to think the way they did. Like, I got deep into a conversation with someone maybe by just asking 3 surgical questions. Now we're in this sort of emotional state in the conversation where they feel close to me. They feel like they trust me. We feel connected. I'm in there. That's where I want to plant a seed. Right? So I may have said, yeah, when I got my license, I knew that I knew more than other agents did, but I was afraid to connect with people because I didn't want to come across as pushy. But as I got deeper into the industry, I realized people are actually craving my direction more than they're afraid that I'm pushy. And that has me wondering, in what other parts of my relationships are people waiting for me to show up? And I'm thinking, I don't want to cross a boundary that I shouldn't. And they're sitting there thinking, if David really cared, he would be getting more into my life. I've now taken this like real estate concept and tied it into the Untethered Soul book that they've been reading. And I've made fertile soil to plant that seed in. And the only way you'll get there is if you genuinely care about what's going on in another person. You can't fake it. But if you are being genuine, those opportunities just pop up all the time. And you just give them a little example of a thing you did different that other agents don't do, or where you put in extra effort, or where you focus on parts of the transaction that other agents miss and why that's valuable to people. And if in that place, if you can plant that seed when their heart is open to you, it will grow, and it will grow into a tree that has a big hanging for sale sign with your name on it. And that's really what you're trying to do to get people to work with you. I don't like when people talk about real estate like, I want to work for you. I want you to hire me to do whatever. Like, it's not really a job. You're not paying me. Right? It's a partnership where we both win if your house sells, and we both win if you buy a house, and we both lose if that doesn't happen. So when you're forming a partnership, it's done through that kind of genuine connection and getting to know the person and them getting to know you.
I mean, I was sitting here all year and I was saying, how can David show up in my life more? And so I created a whole series just to attract him in, and here we are. So
brilliant. Maybe I should be the one interviewing you. You seem to be the brain and I'm just the pinky.
As an agent, obviously investors get a bad rap. Like you said, in training, sometimes you're told investors are a pain in the butt. You don't want to work with them. How is it working with investors, or how do you navigate that? Because they can be very time consuming.
The first thing I do is I train our team and myself not to use the phrase investor, because what does that even mean, right? I mean, if you just buy a house to live in for yourself, you're still investing in real estate in a sense. And then when you use a blanket term like investor, it's either they're all good or they're all bad, right? I think more accurate way to look at it is someone buying an investment property versus someone buying a primary residence, or a combination of that, which is house hacking, right? That's the first designation I make. Now, if you're buying an investment property, before we even talk about what every agent wants to do is to say, hey, tell me what your criteria are and I'll put you on a search. And then you tell me which ones you like. And what they're doing is they're handing the keys to the car over to the client, who usually doesn't know what they want or what to do or what they should be pursuing. They're looking to the agent for direction. The agent's just giving it right back to them. And they're in this odd, like, reverse power struggle where they're both trying to push the power to the other person and nothing ever gets done. What we do is we say, well, what do you want? I want a cash flow. Why? And you'd be amazed, Anson, how many people don't know the answer. Right? I'd say like 50% of the time what comes out is, well, because Brandon and David said that's what I'm supposed to do. Right? And that's a great jumping point, because cash flow is obviously not bad. We like cash flow, but it exists on a spectrum, right? Like some of the properties that cash flow the best right out the gate are one of the worst properties that you don't want to own. You end up losing that money later. And sometimes properties that don't have a great year 1 or year 2 outlook, when you look at it from a 5-year perspective, they're crushing everything that cash flowed a ton, right? Like cash flow is a metric to look at, but not the only metric. And I think when somebody says, I want to buy investment property, you need to get to the why of what it's for, right? This is where agents get frustrated that investors don't know what they want and they're not serious, but you didn't take them seriously. You didn't figure out what is it this person's actually trying to get into, and then propose to them a strategy that works in that market. So if I live in Kansas City, Missouri, there are ways I can find cash flow that I cannot get in Denver, Colorado. All right. So if somebody is listening to the podcast, listening to a person in Kansas City who's crushing it, and they go to you in Denver and they say, I want to do this, that is a terrible idea. That does not work in this environment, right? We have to be the one to tell them, this is what works here, and this is what you can expect, and this is how you make it work. And if they say, well, I don't want to do that, it's okay to let them go fail. Trying to bang a round peg into a square hole, like it might work in Kansas, but won't work in Denver, and just let them know, I'm here if you want to reevaluate that. I think if agents did that more, instead of, I don't want to tell them the truth because then they might work with someone else, let me just get them in my car and go show them homes, our industry as a whole would have a much better reputation.
How can you attract an investor-friendly agent? Or not a lot of agents work with investors, or if they do, they don't have that same approach of, hey, we're on the same team. They feel like you're just another commission. And so, yeah, how does an investor attract good agents?
I think the first thing when I put myself into the investor hat, and an agent is working for me, which I'm like ramping up buying. So that's sort of, I'm shifting from I'm the person helping put people in contract into I need someone to help put me in contract. The first thing that I recognize is nobody is perfect at everything. The same goes with agents. Like they all have their own thing. Oftentimes, and I'm sure, Anson, you've seen this too, the agents who make the most money and sell the most houses are just the best marketers. They don't actually know more about real estate. They often know less, right? It's kind of a SHIT show a lot of the time when you're dealing with them. They're just like a Tasmanian devil that just makes a huge mess. I've heard them say like they're a seagull. They fly in, they squawk, they poop on everyone, and then they leave. And someone else has to clean up the mess. If you're like, wow, this person's on billboards, they must be good, just stop right there. They are good at getting themselves in front of you. That doesn't mean that they know what you're trying to do, right? If you want your hand held, it comes from a different personality than a deeply analytical one who's focused on the bottom line. You might find those two things in conjunction, but very rarely does that happen. If you're wanting someone who is very emotionally supportive and talks to you on the phone for long periods of time and listens to your feelings and validates how scared you feel, you're probably not also going to get someone who's really good at negotiating and analyzing deals. That's like, that skill set doesn't exist in both people, right? So what I do, knowing this, is when I'm interviewing agents or getting to know them, I'm trying to classify what are you good at and what are you bad at, and it's okay to be bad at certain things. I just need you to be bad at the stuff that I don't need help with. Okay. Right. So
you may not need a therapist.
That's exactly right. In this position I'm in, I don't need a therapist, right? I don't even always need an analyzer. What I would need is a strong understanding of that city or that neighborhood and what type of people own homes there, what they do for work, right? That type of information I can't get anywhere else. So when I'm looking at agents now, I'm asking questions like, all right, in the city of, let's throw out a city. You want to pick one, Anson?
Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay, perfect. In Asheville. In fact, that's funny. I just was talking to agents from Asheville.
I'm sure
that's funny. This is literally the conversation we had. I said, what are the biggest cities in North Carolina? And they said Raleigh and is it Asheville? What's the second one? Charlotte, right?
Charlotte, yeah.
And then I said, and then like Asheville's basically kind of third or in that area. And I said, okay, what type of people live in Asheville? What type of people live in Charlotte and Raleigh? And they broke down the demographics of the jobs that are there and what type of people are looking, right? And I said, well, where do people in Charlotte and Raleigh go to vacation? Right? Where are homes becoming unaffordable? And I could see that Asheville is one of those areas that, not right now, but in a couple years, with the way prices are trending in the two big cities, people are going to be pushed into Asheville, right? So if I'm going to buy in Asheville, it's going to be something in that one of the nicer neighborhoods, like the really good suburbs, and a nice house that would draw someone if they got priced out of Charlotte. And that makes sense for them to go to Asheville. That information was wildly valuable for me. I don't need someone who's going to run this deal on the BiggerPockets calculator and send me the spreadsheet because I'm too lazy to learn how to do that. Right. I like agents that can tell me, like, we have handymen, we have contractors that we use before we can connect you with, or that have worked with the property manager closely that can vouch, like, they do a good job in these areas and they're going to struggle in these. And now I know when I'm getting into it.
Well, yeah. And I think that metric of, oh, I've sold, 100 houses this year, that really doesn't mean much, because that just means you're a great marketer. That doesn't mean you're a great agent or that you looked out for the best interest of your clients. But I personally look for the therapist agent because that's the cheapest therapy around. I don't have to pay them unless I close on a house. So it's a win-win.
That's funny.
I just substitute things in my life for commission date.
See if you can work him into picking up your groceries for you and taking your car to get the oil changed.
I need all kinds of agents working around me here. So you're an investor, you're an agent, you've picked up some ninja skills on both sides, or I should say some jujitsu skills. But, you picked up some jujitsu skills on both sides. What is something, and I'll reverse the question here in a minute, but what's something on the agent side that's greatly helped you as an investor? So like maybe it's a tool, a tip, a trick that you're like, I only know this because I'm also an agent and my experience as an agent, and now it's helping me on the investor side. As
an agent, especially in a competitive market like Denver, the Bay Area, Seattle, Austin, these are all very difficult markets to put buyers in contract in because there's such little inventory and there's so much competition. I've learned how to smell the seller that will actually work with you. It won't just say like a parrot on a pirate's shoulder, highest and best, highest and best. Like that's every lazy listing agent's favorite thing to say is just highest and best, submit a blind offer. And then they hand it to their clients and say, which one do you want? There's certain agents that will convey, often in a nuanced way, my client wants to get this house sold. I want to get this house sold. Let's play ball. And knowing those things, I can then use that when I'm looking to buy properties myself based on metrics that I know often indicate motivation, or the way that the listing agent gave information to my agent. I can tell, I don't even want to chase this one. They're going to get 20 offers. They're just, making me go blind. Right. Or, oh, wow, this person actually wants to play ball. I should put more information into.
So how about on the opposite side? What's helped you as an investor on the agent side?
As an investor, you go through this emotional cycle of looking at everything that possibly could go wrong and trying to plan for 400 worst case contingencies when you start. into a bipolar state of I am so excited, I want to do this all the time, and I'm terrified because there's 400 things that could go wrong. And eventually you settle on I am overthinking everything. If I just buy a good property in a good area and wait, I can't go wrong. Okay. That's sort of the journey that I've taken, and I've understood that so many of the things, like the minutia that you just love, it's kind of like day trading. You get people that they love day trading just because they love the feeling of being smart. Like they think they're smarter and they love to do stuff. But then you look at someone who's like, yeah, I just put money in an index fund and waited, and they outperform all the day traders, right? In real estate investing kind of works best like that. I'm going to have some good years. I'm going to have some bad years. I'm going to have opportunities to pull out equity. I'm going to have opportunities to refi. I'm going to have a tenant that trashes a house and I got to start all over. But in 10 years, I'm going to make so much money. I'm good, right? That it helps me bring that perspective to the client who's in the panic phase. So when I was a cop, I trained other cops in use of force. And one of the things that we realized would happen to humans psychologically when they're scared is that they would zoom in on a threat. So you'd hear about a cop who had somebody pull a gun on him. And I would say like, well, who was behind the person that was pulling the gun on you? Or where were the exit routes? And they'd say, I don't remember. I just remember that gun was huge. Like they would all say it's just humongous, right? There's many times in life when we get scared, you tend to focus in, zoom in on the thing that is making you afraid. When zooming out is usually the smarter move to do. People do this when they're buying real estate. And the number one place where it happens the most is when they get that inspection report. So they're in this state of like, oh, I don't want to lose on a house. I have to pay more than I wanted to. I had to go in faster. I didn't get a chance to look at this as thoroughly as I should. And then you get the contract, you're excited, and then buyer's remorse hits you. You're like, what did I do? Did I pay too much? Did I go too fast? Am I crazy? And then you start asking your family members who know nothing about real estate, and your well-meaning stepdad tells you, oh, this is terrible. When I bought a house, my agent did all these other things. And now you're having serious second thoughts, and the inspection report comes back, and you zoom in on that sucker, and every single thing in it becomes the world's biggest problem. And I have a joke that at one point you bought a house that had a crack in the wall, and your mindset shifts to, I now bought a crack that just has a house around it. Like you can't stop thinking about that crack. Okay. The agent's job is to bring some objectivity and reason. You don't want to tell someone buy this house that could be a bad deal, but you also want to let them back out of the deal just because they're feeling the emotion of fear. You have to sort of calmly put all of that in context. Because I bought so many houses myself, I've learned a lot of those tricks, right? So instead of trying to tell someone that crack is not a problem, they don't want to hear that. Like if you think someone's pointing a gun at you, you don't want to hear, oh, it's a small gun or you'll be fine, right? What I do instead is I say, look, let's compare this inspection report to the reports of other houses in this neighborhood. This one's a lot better than all the other houses look like. That one little piece of advice that gives them context, right? It's not, right, I wanted a perfect house and this one has problems. It's all the other houses have more problems than this one. Now, by comparison, this actually looks like a safer bet. Immediately, you see that flood of relief come over them. There's a lot of things like that I can help a client with, and my team can help a client with, because I've gone through that emotional gauntlet of buying properties and having different ways that they worked out.
That's huge because you have that experience yourself. And so as an agent and investor, you can talk to that investor client and say, you know, I've done this before. This is exactly what it looks like. And you can give them that perspective of, hey, 10 years down the road, you're not going to care about this $1,000 crack that can get fixed.
I say that all the time. Like, okay, take someone who bought a house 30 years ago. All right. Have you ever met a human being, Anson, who's like, I wish I wouldn't have bought this house 30 years ago. I knew I overpaid. Yeah. They don't even know what happened in the escrow. Like they literally can't remember. It was life-changing at the moment. They don't remember that it even happened. In fact, everyone I've ever seen that owned a house for 30 years says, I wish I would have bought more. It never, ever ends, right? And so I take that perspective into the advice that I'm giving people. It's that you are supposed to be scared right now, but it's not real. You're going to wish you bought more later. So let's talk to you 30 years from now and ask that person what they think you should do, not you that is right now. And the other piece I think is really important when you bought a lot of properties is you and I know it's not often like a binary it works or it doesn't type of a solution with a property. There are different ways to make different properties work. There are different plays to make on different properties, right? There are deals that are in a great area with a lot of traffic that are going to appreciate a ton, but they're more expensive, and so they might not cash flow in the first year or two. But 10 years from now, you're going to have so much equity you can refinance it by 4 more houses, right? So maybe you want to mix a deal like that in with a duplex that's going to give you cash flow right off the bat, but it's sort of on the outskirts of town. It's not going to appreciate as much. There's different plays for different properties, and I think the good agent can help you see this is the way this tool can be used. Let's put it in a bigger picture and build a strategy around what's available to us versus the investor who's saying, I'm looking for a 12% cash on cash return. If I can't find it, I'm moving on. And they can't see outside of that very narrow window.
Speaking of Joe Rogan, you do jujitsu, right? You're a big fan.
I've done it for like two or 3 months now. Yeah, not a super long time.
Is there anything from that world that has taught you anything about business? Like when you're pinned under like a purple belt, who's like twisting your arm around your head?
There's so much, man, but it's so annoying to the listeners because everyone uses jujitsu for everything. It's like the easiest thing to make an analogy for everything, right? Part of why I enjoy jujitsu is that it is incredibly humbling. So most of my life, if you just follow me around with a camera, I'm in environments and scenarios where everyone's looking up to me. Like, what do we do? David knows everything. He's the answer for it all. He can figure out any problem. And they're all sort of wanting my approval. And then I get impatient sometimes when they don't do something I think they should have known to do, right? And I just end up in this constant state of, why does nobody know what I know? And why are they not doing it like I'm doing it? I'm sure you can relate to just this frustration that you live in all the time. And then I go to jujitsu and I am told, like, here's how you escape this scenario, right? There's you do this. And then when we're actually rolling, it does not even occur to me to do it, okay? Like, it just does not pop in my head. And I get done, and like Justin, the guy who's kind of like taking me under his wing, he's like, yeah, why don't you do that thing? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, that is obviously what I should do. And I practiced it a bunch, but in the state of emotional chaos, it didn't pop in my head, do it. And that helps me relate to these agents that are working for me that are so nervous about making a mistake and so scared about messing up on a client that it doesn't pop in their head to do the thing I taught them. It makes it easier for me to be patient with them, right? I know what will make me remember that is drilling under pressure, right? So it's like we're drilling, but we're also rolling at the same time. That's what'll make the connection in my head to do the thing I'm supposed to do when I'm overwhelmed. So now I try to take my agents and drill them under pressure. Instead of just like sitting in this room and role playing really slowly, I get a client on the phone and I walk through it with the agent, or I make the agent do it. And when they get jammed up and they panic, I jump in and I talk. And then the next time they remember that, right? So it helps me be a better leader when I put myself in that subservient role where I really want the approval of my teachers, right? The black belts in that class or the instructor we have. I'm catching myself like, man, I don't want to mess up. I want him to be happy with me. I don't feel those emotions very often. In the world of real estate, that doesn't happen too much. So I think that's probably like the biggest thing that it's helped me with is just that I'm learning fundamentals. It's not fun. I'm like, just sometimes I get private lessons and all I'm doing is crawling around on the ground and somersaulting and stuff that I'm like, I want to learn how to break someone's arm. What am I doing this for? But I have to learn those. I have to train my body to do those movements effectively and efficiently, just like every other sport I played, before I can get to the fun stuff. And I think for a lot of investors, they want to just go out there and put something in contract and then tell everybody like, hey, I'm a real estate investor, but they don't understand the fundamentals of it. They would be better off to buy a house with 5 bedrooms and rent the rooms out to people and get a feel for what the rhythm of collecting rent payments is, how to keep tenants happy, how to bookkeeping, who you call when something breaks. Like, all of that is where they should be starting, but they want to jump right up into, I bought 12 doors so they can go and give everyone their door count when they shake their hand at a conference, right? It puts me back. Yes. All these things that drive us nuts. Now that I'm in jiu-jitsu, I'm feeling what the new people are feeling, and it forces me to remember what it was like, and then I can give better advice to those people, because I know what it's like when I want to show up and learn a cool thing, and my instructor's like, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, just Mr. Miyagiing me with this wax on, wax off stuff all day long.
That's right. But fun is the key part of fundamentals. So I don't see how you can't have fun, just doing simple repetitive tasks. But what's the technical term when you take someone's beard in jiu-jitsu and you choke them out with it?
I need to look at that.
I'm sure. Have you done that to
The
Brandon
rear
yet?
bearded choke? No.
The rear bearded choke.
I haven't done that to him yet. Although I'm sure that's actually legal. It's kind of like in football where you can grab their hair if it comes out the back of the helmet. I'm sure you could grab the beard. He'd probably put beard oil in it or something to make it really slippery, knowing Brandon.
Yeah, right. Nice.
All right, Anson, let me ask you, if there was one thing that you could download into a new agent's brain, they come, they want to work for you, and they're like, I want to sell houses. And this person's going to have to learn this lesson before they are good at it. And it often has to be learned the hard way. But like the Matrix, you could stick something in the back of their skull and just download this piece of information. What would that be?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Man, there's so much in there because I think it's something that's unteachable and that you can really only learn through experience. And so that would be ideal just to jam it in there. And I think you touched on it earlier, which is this whole mindset piece of kind of becoming somebody that clients want to work with for a lot of different reasons. But you can't necessarily teach that. You could probably teach it like in a year-long boot camp or something. But the repetitive of doing transactions over and over again teaches you a lot of those skills. And so I think it's like knowing how to listening for cues on how you can help kind of bridge the gap of what they're looking for. They might be telling you that price is the most important thing. I need the highest price possible, but you're missing the subtle cues of, maybe some rent back is more important, or, even like a 2-week closing. Maybe they need a cash buyer to come in. Like these nuances of clients and what makes you kind of the puzzle piece that solves their problems as much as possible. And so I think that that's not teachable, but man, if we had that Matrix thing, that would be crazy. We could then nobody's special, right? That's like
true.
Incredible.
If everybody's special, nobody's special. That's a good argument for why you should run towards hard things, because there's less people running there. All right. Same question. Now we're gearing it towards an investor. So you've decided I want to be a real estate investor, and you have this expectation in your head of what that looks like. What is the one thing, if you could download into their head, that they would need to be successful?
Yeah, there's there's a million ways to skin the investor cat and make money in this business. But I think having that, showing them their own perspective of their goals. And you touched on this earlier, and I think it's a perfect analogy of like, what does that look like in 30 years? And then how did you get there? So like, what's kind of the end goal? And then will this house that you're looking at, or just saying that you have 12 doors, is that going to matter in 30 years? Or is the fundamentals going to really matter? A lot of those types of things where it's like you back out their perspective to the point where they can see the bigger picture, instead of getting lost in the grind of analysis or getting lost in all these little tiny things. Now they know the entire picture, and they go, oh, I shouldn't have been so focused on analysis until I die, and then never taking action on it, going to a conference, then never putting anything into action. It's like you only get this year once, so you might as well make it the best that you can and go out there and take action. If you buy a property this year, that 5-bedroom house, and collect rent on it, then you're much better off next year, and you're closer to your goals, and instead of analyzing and waiting for that perfect 12 unit to come along, which comes with a lot more headaches that you may not be ready for.
That's so good. We're finding that a lot I have an expansion team in Los Angeles, and we'll get these clients that go find this amazing deal, like way under market value, and it's in a great neighborhood. And the reason they're getting it at such a good deal is because it has tenants that they can't get out because of the moratorium. That's why the seller is selling it at a good price. And so you sort of have to be willing to eat that frog if you want to get that good deal. And they get into escrow, and then there's this like, I don't know, I don't want to deal with this problem. The rehab might be bigger than I thought. But that was the whole reason you had meat on the bone in the first place. So I do agree with you that understanding that there's a spectrum and like success is on that spectrum. It's not just yes or no. You have to figure out how much headache you're comfortable dealing with in order to make money. And if you can just be honest with yourself and say, I'm not a headache guy or girl. I go to work and I make pretty good money and I just want to invest that. You need to find properties that are not headache stuff. And if you're one of those like masochists that just love pain, awesome. Go take on all those headaches and you are the person who should get the high upside, but nobody gets both. And that's, I think, important to acknowledge.
No. Yep, I know both investors, and I highlighted one in my BPCon breakout, which was he just wants as little headache as possible, bought 11 turnkeys, and has one manager that he talks to, and that's his scenario. And then I have a friend who works with just the hairiest land deal in Alabama, and it's like, literally like 15 errors, and he's chasing down, 14 people who don't want to sign this thing and kind of getting them on board and paying them up front, doing all this stuff in order to get that deal. But he gets the most killer land deals, whereas my other friend just paid retail and rents it out and collects a check, and that's it. So it's such a huge spectrum, and you got to just kind of fit in where your goals, your personality is. Like I'm not really a headache guy, so the 15 errors is terrible, but I also don't want to pay turnkey prices for a house.
So on that spectrum where you fit in, right? And because you know where you fit in, when the right opportunity crosses your path, your gut says go for it. I think that's what the analysis paralysis people are waiting for. They're waiting for their gut to say go for it, but it never actually gets a chance to because they don't know what they're looking for. They just love analyzing everything. So and there's some wisdom to be taken from someone like you, Anson, who's bought several properties and works with clients, that you've kind of come to the piece you have with I'm somewhere in the middle, and that's awesome for you.
Yep, and you could do that on the agent side too, where I don't work with certain types of investors because they take up more time. And those types of deals are very hard to find here.
So that's a good point.
I'll work with house hackers. I'll work with, landlords. But if you want to go, if you want to wholesale and use me as an agent, I'm not going to be able to probably find you the deals that you want. So
let's just put an end to people coming to us agents with an off-market deal. We're not getting paid on an off-market deal unless you pay us, and I don't think you want to do that. So if you're going to go for off-market deals, you either need to pay your agent or not use an agent. And if you're not comfortable not using an agent, stop insisting on off-market deals. I would love that. I'd love to abolish that, as well as the door count. Like, hi, my name is David, and I have 14 doors.
Right. Yes. So with abolishing things in real estate, I think we'll end our time there. But no, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on and offering your insight on being a broker, agent, investor. Obviously throwing in great tips from your books and from the podcast and everything else. So I really appreciate your time. So thanks for coming on and joining us.
My pleasure, bro.
So thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much for David for coming on and sharing his insights and his 20,000 metaphors that tie everything together in such a great way. I love the way that he ties things together and applies things to the real world. If you want to hear more from me, please find me on BiggerPockets, find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, find me somewhere and connect. I would love that. Leave a comment. And until next time, get out there and follow David Greene's advice. That's what I'm doing. All right, see ya.